Ooh. Didn't cut my head off this time. Got him. All right, everyone knows that BMW helped with the Toyota Supra. That's just like a thing that everyone knows.
Stop it. Get some help.
Everyone knows that the BRZ and the FRS are so closely tied that if you were dating one of them through some high school like dance, you'd probably end up making a mistake on some Friday night that would end up costing you likely the relationship, if you know what I'm saying. And you know that any new YouTube page, it seems to always be sponsored by Squarespace until eBay Motors took over. For some reason, I don't understand how all of that works, but it's a pretty exciting time. And you're waiting for me to say that this video is sponsored by Squarespace. First off, I would never sell out to, hey, by the way, this video is sponsored by Squarespace. You can get yourself a web. I'm kidding. But there are automotive collaborations that are a little less known. One might even say an Easter egg of sorts. My favorite drink when I'm trying to stay awake in downtown Appleton is a coffee martini. That's a fun fact. And I'm Alex.Martini with 2 underscores at the end of it on Instagram. And today we're going to be talking about some car collaborations that you probably didn't even know actually existed. By the way, I made 32 cents on TikTok yesterday, so it would be cool if you subscribed and dropped a comment on what you'd like to see us talk about next, so at least I can make 46 cents here on YouTube. Also, a McDouble is so close I can taste it. Ramen, I can get 2 packets, so I'm good with that. Also, be sure to add your email over to alexmartini.net. We actually just dropped the touring bag. We've got a couple left, so if you're interested in supporting the new channel, you can pick up one of those. Otherwise, our June apparel drop is a couple tees. They're very, very cool. I'm very excited. And if you enter in your email, you get the first access to the limited edition drop. Anyway, let's get into it. Why do companies collaborate? Like, that's a really good question. And this happens actually a lot more than you think. We know of the common ones, but once you hop into like the first generation Tesla, you may actually notice that when you go to turn stalks, it feels a little bit more like a Mercedes, and that would be because it actually is. It's a Mercedes-Benz / Daimler product. The whole interior components practically were given to them by Mercedes.
That's my ice cream cone.
Great! Now let them have it!
You can have it. Say thanks.
But the B-Class EV uses Tesla technology, and the collaboration goes on as Mercedes-Benz doesn't know jack shit about electricity for mass production, and Tesla can't make a car with the same QC 2 times in a row. It's just a thing. They're working through it. They're getting better. Okay, but buy a first-generation Tesla, and you kind of know what I mean. One of the biggest reasons is because the companies pick what they're weak at and find another supplier to help bolster that part of their platform. And they do this a lot. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. The example above is one such case, but things like the 4-cylinder Nissan that was built in Tennessee helped Mercedes enter the US market with an entry-level vehicle, probably something that you wouldn't really assume or ever really guess would happen. And it's something that Mercedes-Benz couldn't do without Nissan. In fact, Mercedes-Benz is kind of a freeloader. Another major reason is because some auto manufacturers are pretty small and just can't make cars without the partnerships, period. A lot of times we think every auto manufacturer is the same size, but companies like Mazda and Scion are tiny. And an example of this would be Scion with their IALA thing and Mazda with their Mazda 2. It's the same car. The MX-5 and the Fiat 124 Spider, pretty much the same car. And another pretty solid reason is because it makes for a more exciting car, because some of these car companies are very good at niche things. For example, it's pretty well known that as of recent times, Toyota isn't the most exciting company in the world.
The 2022 Toyota Corolla versus the 2022 Kia Forte.
They're known as being like heavy mega conservative. And I know that they made the Supra and I know they made the MR2, but now they make the Camry. And then that's like their bread and butter. But companies like Mazda, on the other hand, have like 14 employees and they just want to come on board and have fun, introduce some hybrid technology, but also liven up the car's suspension for a more sportier, more engaged driving experience. And that's something that Toyota really just doesn't want to deal with. So it means that collaborations are just always going to be there. And sometimes they're for like the functional trade aspect or because other companies are just better at doing something than another one. And these can be traced all the way back to the 70s. Here's some of the craziest ones that you might not know. Number 1 would be the McLaren and BMW on the Mclaren F1. If you follow me on TikTok, because I do that every once in a while, you know this. But the McLaren F1 isn't all English except for its heart. The famous and likely poster child car for anyone born in the 90s was the McLaren F1. And if that's not true for you, it had a dihedral door opening, okay? 6-speed initial hyper car that made dreams come true and everything wet. But when it comes to the 6.1 liter within it, it wasn't actually a McLaren engine at all, but it was a BMW S70-2 V12. Initially, the McLaren was to have a Honda engine, after Gordon Murray had spent much of his time at Honda's Tochigi Research Center with Ayrton Senna. This is true. The F1 car at the time had a Honda-powered platform, and we gotta remember that he was developing Formula One cars, and so he wanted Honda to be the initial company that was supposed to sign up for this McLaren F1 partnership. And with Murray wanting to be the F1 car to be as comfortable as the same kind of retrospect as the Honda NSX, Murray pleaded to Honda to make a V10 or V12 at 5 liters or less inside the McLaren F1. And Honda, in short, they just said no. The company Murray would inevitably go to because of their short timelines was BMW, after throwing just about everything under the sun at this engine bay for this car. One of the examples of an engine that they were going to use was a 7.4 liter Chevy V8. All right, the time frame for the development of the motor was so short that BMW chose to only use prior design technology to ensure reliability and a lack of necessary testing that they would typically do for something like this. And this meant that the BMW engine ended up being 14% more powerful than Murray's needs, but 35 pounds heavier. This collaboration and quick turnaround is the birth of the hypercar genre, in my opinion, and the McLaren F1 is a car that will always go down in the history books as one of the greatest cars ever made. The tough part is when you talk about F1 and the McLaren F1, you always have to say McLaren before it, unless you're talking about McLaren F1 racing team. Very confusing. Mercedes-Benz and their 500e is another interesting one, and it's the Mercedes-Benz. It's their 500e model, and it's Porsche. Porsche had come on board with Mercedes-Benz with their 500e, which was aimed to be a touring saloon with the performance that would make you feel like you were 100% going to get a speeding ticket. And these cars were beautiful. On the countryside, rich mahogany, okay, cocaine everywhere. Okay, this car was perfect for anyone that was a European gangster, okay? Now this car was almost perfect by definition. And in 1988, Porsche AG would be awarded the development contract by Daimler-Benz with the target of designing an experimental series of the base type W124. The 5-liter 4-valve V8 would have 10,500 cars made, and Porsche held zero back in making this car an absolute monster. It had a 6.1 second quarter mile and an electronic limited 250 kilometers an hour, 155 mile per hour speedometer limit. And back then, you have to remember, Porsche wasn't the true successful company we now know it as. Porsche, they were in a crisis. They were doing terrible in terms of the export business at the time, and they had a business model that just wasn't keeping up with the competition. This was when BMW was just laying waste out there. And these unique collaborations brought in some desperately needed revenue that Porsche needed to survive long enough to make every middle-class person a Macan. Buy the Macan so that they can race 911s. That's Porsche's entire model. Another good one would be Corvette and their ZR1 and the Lotus name, all right? That's another collaboration that most of us don't really know anything about, because who spends time actually learning about C4 Corvettes if you don't have New Balances and jean shorts? It's tucked in with a t-shirt. It's a thing and it's true, but I'm gonna say it. That platform is a little bit slept on. Now, Corvette and Chevrolet have always had some weird history with development of this sports car, from the mid-engine design that they introduced in the C8 being almost 4 decades old, to Corvette's most recent step into developing a fully electric C8 Corvette in a matter of what felt like months. Corvette's been following the trend of electrified cars coming to market in the coming years, but if you go back to the good old C4 Corvette and some generations even before that, they were always doing wonky shit. If you look at the top trim ZR1, Chevy was looking to do weird shit back then too, because it was the 70s and everybody was feeling themselves, you know what I mean? Lotus would come on board to help design what would eventually be known as the LT5 engine in the ZR1. The engine, which would be assembled in Stillwater, Oklahoma at the Mercury Marine's Mercruiser division, that's real, came to be after GM had acquired the group Lotus in 1986, and as such immediately went to Lotus to ensure that the C4 Corvette would be the fastest production car they could possibly make that could still be bought by an upper middle class person. So replacing the L98 motor in it, Lotus would go on to help upgrade the braking and steering system in the ZR1 to keep the 4.4 second 0 to 60 domestic muscle car planted on the ground, okay? And another fun fact is that the C4 ZR1 also featured a suspension system engineered by Bilstein and was awfully copy-pasted from the Porsche 959, with some fun mods from, again, Lotus and their Formula One division, which is an insanely cool story. One might even say that that whole LT5 story has even more history in terms of where that engine was produced before it was even put in the ZR1, which some might claim actually was a boat engine. That's outside of this conversation. The collaborations between auto manufacturers is nothing new, and some are new and well-known, while others just aren't. So what's your favorite car collaboration? Drop it below and I'll do my best to answer every single comment out there and do a shout out on the next video, okay? Don't forget to subscribe and drop your email over at alexmartini.net because I'm still working on the good old apparel and the next limited drop. I'm gonna have a martini now, which is, I actually just pour glass in a cup that's a triangle and then throw some coffee in there. It's pretty freaking good if I do say so myself. Call me a bartender because I'm out of here. I'm Alex.Martini, 2 underscores. We'll see you later, I think.